Omolewa had always believed in love, the kind of love that makes you give up everything and still feel like you've won. She was a bright, beautiful girl from the city, full of big dreams and even bigger hopes. She wanted to open her own boutique one day, design clothes, maybe travel. But all of that changed the day she met Taju. Taju was nothing like the city boys. He was rugged, charming, and full of bold confidence. A mechanic from the quiet village of Igudu, he spoke like a man who had the world figured out. He told Omolewa she was special, that he'd never seen a woman like her. He made her laugh, called her his queen, and promised to build a future with her. It didn't matter that he didn't have much. The way he looked at her made her feel like she had everything. So when he asked her to marry him, she said yes, without thinking twice. Everyone around her thought she was crazy. "You're giving up your dreams for a mechanic?" her friends asked. But Omolewa didn't care. She believed in love. She believed in Taju. She packed up her life, left the city behind, and moved to Igudu, a small village with dusty roads, old roofs, and slow days. At first, everything felt like a fairy tale. The village women welcomed her, and Taju couldn't stop smiling. He'd come home from the garage and wrap his arms around her, like he couldn't believe she was real. Omolewa cooked for him, helped him fix the little house they rented, even gave sewing lessons to local girls in her free time. She missed the city, yes, but she was in love, and that was enough, until it wasn't. The moment she told Taju she was pregnant, something shifted. His smile faded, his touch grew cold, the jokes stopped, the warmth disappeared. He no longer looked at her like he used to. Days turned into nights without a single kind word, and slowly, Omolewa began to feel invisible in her own home. No more kisses on her forehead, no more late-night chats, just silence and distance. She would sit alone in the tiny kitchen, hand on her belly, wondering where her loving husband had gone. Her dreams were already buried under the soil of Igudu, and now it felt like her heart was being buried too. But she stayed, because she still believed maybe he would come back to her. Maybe love could still win. She had no idea. The worst was yet to come, too. It wasn't long after Omolewa's pregnancy started to show that Taju's true colours came out. He wasn't the sweet man who used to chase her around the house, laughing, or the caring husband who called her his queen. He turned into someone else, someone cold, someone cruel. At first, it was small things. He would roll his eyes when she asked him to carry heavy things. He'd sigh loudly if she asked for water while she was resting her swollen feet. But soon, the small things became sharp words. Every morning, Omolewa woke up praying he'd look at her the way he once did. But all she got were insults. "Look at how fat you're getting," he'd sneer, eyes full of disgust. "Are you going to eat everything in this house?" His words felt like slaps. Sometimes she'd cry quietly while cooking his meals, wiping away tears before he saw them. But even when he did see, he didn't care. His eyes were empty. As her belly grew, the chores became harder. Sweeping, fetching water, bending to wash clothes. Every task felt like climbing a mountain. She asked him once, timidly, if he could help her carry water from the well. He threw his hands in the air and shouted so the whole compound could hear. "Did I get you pregnant alone? Don't bother me with your laziness." She stood frozen, embarrassed, her hands on her belly, feeling like the ground should open up and swallow her whole. At night, Taju started coming home late. Sometimes it was midnight, sometimes he didn't come at all. When Omolewa asked where he had been, he'd snap, "You're not my mother. Stop questioning me." Then he'd slam the door so hard the walls shook. The neighbours peeked through their windows, but no one came to ask if she was okay. They whispered behind closed doors, shaking their heads, but they never dared to speak up. Omolewa began to shrink into herself. She stopped going outside except to get water. She avoided the market, too ashamed of the bruises on her heart, and the gossip she could feel buzzing around her whenever she passed. Her dreams felt like faded memories, and the love she once felt so sure of now felt like a cruel joke. Every night she lay awake, holding her belly, whispering to her unborn baby, "I'm so sorry. I don't know how to protect you." And still, she hoped Taju would walk through the door, take her hand, and say he was sorry. But that day never came. One hot afternoon, Omolewa was sitting quietly in the bedroom, folding baby clothes she had sewn herself from old fabric scraps. Taju had gone out hours before, saying he needed to get some spare parts from the next village. but something in her heart felt restless. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. When she heard his voice outside the window, she moved closer, curious, and what she heard made her whole world stop. Taju was standing near the mango tree, speaking softly but sharply to a woman whose laughter made Omalewa's skin crawl. "Why are you still with that woman?" the lady asked him. Taju's answer cut deeper than any knife. "She's good for one thing only, free food and a baby factory," he said with a cold laugh. "After she gives birth, I'll send her back to her people." Omalewa's hands flew to her mouth, but she couldn't stop the sob that escaped her throat. She staggered back, feeling dizzy, like the ground had dropped from under her feet. Her ears rang. Her heart had pounded so hard it hurt. She remembered every promise he made, every sweet word, every time he called her his queen, and she realized it was all a lie, all of it. She wanted to run outside and scream, to hit him, to ask him why, but her legs felt like they were made of stone. She sank to the floor, cradling her belly, rocking back and forth as silent tears poured down her face. The worst part wasn't even his betrayal. It was that the man she loved so deeply had never really loved her back. From that day, Omalewa moved through the house like a ghost. She cooked his meals without looking him in the eye. She cleaned the house in silence, praying he wouldn't notice how broken she was. Every time he left, she would sit by the window, waiting until his laughter with his mistress faded into the distance. Then she'd bury her face in her hands and cry until there were no tears left. Deep inside, a small flame of anger began to burn, but she kept it hidden. She knew she had no money, no family nearby, nowhere to go. She was stuck, for now, so she kept her head down, her voice soft, and waited, because something in her heart whispered that one day she would find a way out. The rain started just before midnight. Thunder rumbled over Igudu village, and flashes of lightning lit up the small, shabby room where Omalewa lay tossing in pain. Her contractions had started hours earlier, each wave of agony stronger than the last. She tried to wake Taju, but he was already in a bad mood from drinking earlier. When she touched his shoulder, he pushed her hand away roughly. "Leave me alone, woman," he slurred, his eyes bloodshot and cold. She bit her lip to stop herself from crying out as another contraction tore through her. She whispered, "Taju, please, the baby is coming. I need help." But instead of helping, he sat up and glared at her like she was something filthy. "Of course it is," he shouted over the sound of pounding rain. "You think I have time for your nonsense? You're just a burden." His words echoed in the small room, louder than the thunder. He stood up and pointed at the door, his face twisted with anger. "Get out! Go die somewhere else if you must." Omalewa stared at him, her mouth open, shocked beyond words. Another wave of pain made her double over. She clutched her belly, but he didn't move to help. He just threw the door open, and the wind sent cold rain spraying into the room. "Out!" he shouted again. Tears mixed with rain as Omalewa stepped outside, barefoot, wearing only a thin wrapper soaked through in seconds. Lightning flashed, showing her terrified face as she stumbled into the muddy darkness. Every step felt like knives stabbing her from the inside. She looked back once, hoping he would come after her, but Taju just slammed the door shut, cutting her off completely. The village was silent except for the storm. Her screams of pain were swallowed by the wind. Her feet slipped on the wet ground, but she forced herself to keep moving, one painful step at a time. She thought of her baby, of the tiny heart hard beating inside her, and she whispered through gritted teeth, "Stay with me, my child, please." She had no idea where she was going. Every flash of lightning showed empty paths and dark huts. The rain stung her skin like needles, but she kept going, because there was no other choice. Alone, abandoned, and terrified, Omalewa walked through the storm, her only prayer that she could survive long enough to bring her baby into the world. The night Omalewa went into labor was the kind of night people in Igudu village prayed would never come. The sky was angry, dark clouds rolling in as rain crashed down like the heavens had burst open. Thunder roared so loud it shook the little wooden house. Inside, Omalewa was doubled over, clutching her belly as wave after wave of pain made her gasp for breath. She knew the baby was coming and she was terrified. She tried to wake Taju, but he was lying on the mat, snoring with an empty bottle beside him. She shook his shoulder, her voice trembling. "Taju, please, it's time. I need help." But when his eyes snapped open, they were full of rage. He shoved her hand away so hard she almost fell. "Can't you see I'm trying to sleep?" he shouted, his words slurred with anger. Another contraction hit, stronger than before, and Omalewa cried out, clutching her swollen belly. But instead of helping her, Taju stood up and pointed at the door with a face twisted in disgust. "I'm tired of you and your whining. You're nothing but a burden. Get out of my house." She stared at him, eyes wide with disbelief. Rain was pouring in through the open door he had flung wide. Wind blew cold air across her face, and the sound of thunder filled her ears. "Please, don't do this," she whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. But Taju just sneered. "Go die somewhere else," he yelled, his voice cruel and sharp. He stepped forward and pushed her hard toward the door. She staggered outside into the freezing rain, barefoot, and wearing only a thin cloth that clung to her like a second skin. The mud was slippery under her feet. As she tried to find her balance, lightning flashed, showing her terrified face for a split second before darkness swallowed her again. She took one shaky step after another, each contraction nearly knocking her off her feet. The village was silent, everyone hiding in their homes from the storm. No one came out to help. Omalewa's cries were lost in the howling wind. She felt cold water running down her back, soaking her hair and skin. But she kept going, her only thought, the tiny life inside her. Every time she almost fell, she whispered, "Stay with me, my child. Amala, please stay with me." She was alone, scared and in so much pain, but she refused to give up. Step by painful step, Omalewa walked deeper into the night, praying she would find someone, anyone, before it was too late. Omalewa didn't know how long she had been walking through the storm. Her legs felt like they were made of stone, each step heavier than the last. Rain kept pouring down, soaking her completely, and every contraction left her weaker than before. She could barely see through the sheets of water, but in the distance, she spotted a dark shape that looked like a small building. Summoning the last of her strength, she stumbled toward it. It was an old abandoned clinic at the edge of the village, a place people said was haunted, so no one ever went near it. Omalewa didn't care about ghosts. The only thing she cared about was her baby. She pushed the door open with shaking hands and stepped inside. The room was dark and smelled of dust and old medicine. She tried to call out for help, but her voice was barely a whisper. Then everything went black. When Omalewa opened her eyes, she was lying on a thin mattress with a warm blanket over her. The storm still raged outside, but inside, a small lantern flickered, throwing gentle light on the kind face of an old woman. The woman was busy boiling water over a small fire. Her hands moved quickly and surely, like someone who had done this many times before. The old woman looked over and saw Omalewa was awake. She rushed to her side, placing a gentle hand on her forehead. "Stay calm, my child," she said in a soft, soothing voice. "I am Mama Kike. You and your baby will be fine. Just breathe with me." Omalewa tried to speak, but another contraction made her cry out. Mama Kike grabbed her hand, held it tight, and guided her through the pain. "Push, my dear. You're strong. You can do this," she encouraged, her voice never to shake even once. With every push, Omalewa felt like her body was tearing apart, but Mama Kike never let go of her hand. She wiped her sweat, whispered prayers, and gave her strength when she had none left. After what felt like forever, a tiny cry broke through the storm outside. Omalewa sobbed in relief as Mama Kike lifted a healthy baby boy into her arms. "He's perfect," Mama Kike said with a warm smile, wrapping the baby in a soft cloth. Omalewa looked at her son, tears streaming down her face, and kissed his tiny forehead. She couldn't believe they had made it. Mama Kike cleaned them both up and tucked Omalewa into bed like a mother would her own child. She brought her warm broth, changed the baby's cloths, and sang them old lullabies. For the first time in so long, Omalewa felt safe. Mama Kike looked into her eyes and said softly, "You're not alone anymore, my daughter. Rest now. I will take care of you both." And in that moment, Omolewa knew she had found an angel in the storm.